Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at Macbeth. Specifically we're going to be focusing on the themes and some of the key characters and some of the quotations as well. So this video has been designed for anyone that's getting ready for your exam, and if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe. It really does help us out, and that way you're going to be kept up to date with all the latest videos that we produce. So the first thing I'd like to do is look at the following statements and identify which ones are true and which ones are false. So the first one says, you need to use quotations from the extract you are given as well as the whole play. So this is in terms of an actual exam paper. So you need to use quotations from the extract you're given as well as the play as a whole. Number two, you have to link back to the context in each paragraph that you write. Number three, King Duncan doesn't value Macbeth's efforts in the war, and that happens in Act 1. Next we have Macbeth goes to see the witches on 3 different occasions. Then we have it is Act 2, Scene 1, where Macbeth sees the dagger. And finally, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. This is a quotation from Lady Macbeth. So again, what you need to do here is to go through and look at each of these statements in turn and decide which are true and which are false. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the answers below. So for our true statements then, you need to use quotations from the extract you are given as well as the play as a whole. Secondly, we have it is Act 2, Scene 1, where Macbeth sees the dagger. For our false statements, you have to link back to context in each paragraph. So this isn't strictly true. What we want to make sure that you're doing is avoiding just giving us a history lesson. Only link back to context if you think it really does support the point you were trying to make. Next we have King Duncan doesn't value Macbeth's effort in the war, Act 1. So we know this isn't true because when Macbeth is actually finished fighting in the war, Duncan actually expresses his appreciation for him and for Banquo, and also he gives him honours and rewards as well. Next, Macbeth goes to see the witches on 3 occasions is false, he only goes to see them twice. And the final one, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, is not a quotation from Lady Macbeth. It is in fact a quotation from Macbeth himself. So by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to record some key quotations in relation to a theme of ambition. Secondly, you'll be able to understand how that theme is characterised in the play. And finally, you'll be able to apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Now this might be just understanding how to approach the exam, or it might be actually that you try and attempt the exam question yourself. If that is the case and you want some feedback or someone to mark it, then please do feel free to get in touch. Look at the quotation in full and attempt the challenges that follow. So we're going to look at that quotation that we just looked at, and we know that this is a quote from Macbeth. So it says, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls over the other. So first thing I'd like to do is think about what does this quotation mean. If you can stretch yourself a little further, I want you to think about the super challenge. And can you figure out what act and scene this has came from? And then finally, if you can stretch yourself even further still, look at the themes on the next part of the video and which one do you think it fits into best. So essentially in this series of videos what we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about actually merging some of our key quotations with some of the themes that may come up in the actual exam. Now if you feel like you need to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and look at the themes in the next part of the video. So below are some major themes that come up in the play. Assess your understanding of each one and attempt the challenges that follow. So we have the supernatural or witchcraft. We have leadership, kingship and tyranny. We have femininity, masculinity, guilt, bravery and courage, and ambition. So first thing I'd like to think about is thinking back to that quotation that we just went through. Which theme does the previous quotation relate best to? For the super challenge, I'd like to consider the fact that sometimes quotes can be linked to numerous different themes, and is this the case with that quotation? So essentially, could you only use that quotation if you have an exam question based around the theme of ambition, or could you use it for multiple other themes that could come up in the exam? And for our final challenge, our mega challenge, how confident would you feel if one of these came up in the exam? So each week we're going to be looking at a key theme and we're going to try and break it down to make sure that if one of these do come up in a real live assessment, you feel like you know how to do it in a full and competent way possible. Exam question. So for each theme, there are a number of questions that could come up and we're going to look at one together. So this one says then, starting with this speech, explore how Shakespeare presents ambition in Macbeth. You can write about how Shakespeare presents ambition in the speech and how Shakespeare presents ambition in the play as a whole. Now this is actually coming from AQA, which has said there's 30 marks for this question, with 4 marks coming for AO4, which is linked to context. Now if you can think about the stretch and challenge task as well, can you recall any quotes from this play to use in this response? So within the exam you will actually be given an extract to go with this, but it's also important to think about, if you had to, would you be able to recall any of these quotations by yourself? Look at the extracts and identify any quotations to link back to the exam question. So it says then, Glamis thou art, and Cawdor and shall be what thou art promised. Yet I do fear thy nature, it is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What thou wouldst highly, that wouldst thou wholly, wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. Thou'lt have great Glamis, that which cries thou must do, if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do, then wishes shall be undone. Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round, which fate and metaphysical aid does seem to have thee crowned withal. So what I'd like you to do now is have a look at this part of the text. This is the one that we're giving as part of the actual exam question, and I'd like to see if you can identify some of the really important quotations that you may have studied in class, specifically with the theme of ambition in mind. So again, as we've said before, if you feel like you need to pause this and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. And what we're going to do after this is we're going to start thinking about other quotations from the play as a whole that you can use to answer this question. Look at the quotations below and work out the words or phrases that are missing. So number 1 says, to be thus is blank, but to be blank thus. Number 2, this blank, whose sole name blank, our tongues. Number 3, come you blank that tend on blank thoughts, blank me here. Number 4, stars, hide your blank, let not light see my black and deep blank. And number 5, our final one, vaulting blank which overleaps blank. So it's important to think about what might go into these spaces. Some of these are a little bit more challenging than others. If you're not too sure about all of them, don't worry about it too much, because we will be going through them in more detail in a moment. If you can think about a stretch and challenge task as well, can you put these in chronological order, so the actual correct order that these occur in the actual play. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So for number 1, to be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. And this is coming from Act 3, Scene 1. So being king is not enough. Macbeth's ambition expands to maintaining power at all costs. Number 2, this tyrant whose sole name blisters our tongues. And that's in Act 4, Scene 3. Macbeth's ambition has transformed him into a tyrant in the eyes of Scotland. Number 3, come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. And that's Act 1, Scene 5, and of course that is Lady Macbeth. She's calling on dark forces to rid her of compassion so she can pursue power. Number 4, vaulting ambition which overleaps itself, which is Act 1. And number 5, our last one, stars hide your fires, let not light see our black and deep desires, which again is also from Act 1. Now what I'd like you to do is to have a look at the model responses and attempt the challenges that follow. So within the model responses there are 3 different examples, and what I'd like you to do is to read through each example and identify which responses would get the most marks. If you can try the super challenge, I want you to look at the grade 3 response and identify 2 or more ways that the response could be improved. And then for the mega challenge, I want you to use the examples to create your own success criteria for the exam and try and consider what makes it a good response compared to a low level one. Now if you are struggling to start, we're going to go through the mark scheme now on the next slide, and all of this can be used to help you to actually come to a determination over those 3 examples and decide which ones will get the higher marks in the exam. So use the mark scheme to write your own success criteria. Okay, we start at the bottom with level 1. So you can see there they've got more of a narrative description, and if you're not too sure what I mean by this, you can read through the next part that says to achieve this level you need to. Essentially a narrative description though is where you just tell me the story of what happens. Next, if we go up that, we have some supported understanding, so we're starting to get a little bit more analytical. And reasoned explanation, which is level 3, is like you're starting to sound a little bit more analytical. You're actually starting to use those quotations, link them back to the question, and also link them to some of the central themes or ideas within the play. Now if we think about the slightly harder levels, we have level 4, which is exploration of the text as a construct. You have level 5, you have a developed and a balanced analysis, and then you've got a conceptual critique as well. Now with each of these levels, it's important to notice that the skills actually incorporate the previous skills and then just add on ever so slightly. So doing this with a previous student as well, he commented on the difference between, let's say, a level 3 and let's say a level 5 response isn't that dramatic. It's really using a lot of the skills, but they're developed in such more of an analytical way, and that's a really important thing to think about when you are actually writing your response. Now in terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. So we're going to recall the key themes in the play, understand how to approach an exam question, and then finally apply your understanding to attempt an exam question and then track your progress. If you need any additional support, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far in the video guys, I want to thank you for your commitment, and if you do need any help or support, then please feel free to reach out. All the best, thank you, bye bye. Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at our second lesson in the series, looking specifically at Macbeth and the themes and characters. Now all of these videos are designed to help you prepare for the actual exam. If you do have any questions or concerns, please feel free to comment and let us know, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. So first thing I want you to do is to have a look at the images that we've got there and try and think about the theme that we're going to focus on within this video. So as you can see there, we've got an image of witches, we have a bird, and then we also have the image of a ghost there as well. So the actual thing that we're thinking about here is the supernatural. So can you recall any key quotations that might be linked to this theme? Now if you're not too sure about this, if there's any quotations that you really can't remember, don't worry about it too much, because we will go through it in a later part of the video as well. Class feedback. The theme of today's lesson, as I've already said, is going to be the supernatural. What I'd like to think about before we move on is just how confident you feel about this at the moment. So try and give yourself a rating out of 5. How confident do you feel if this came up in a real live exam right now, and what kind of things would you need to talk about in order to be successful in your response? So by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to recall some of the key quotations in relation to the theme of supernatural, understand how that theme is characterised in the play, and finally apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Learning recap. Look at the themes below and attempt the challenges that follow. So we have supernatural and witchcraft, we have leadership, kingship and tyranny, femininity, masculinity, guilt, bravery and courage, and ambition. So the first thing I'm going to think about is Which of these themes have you looked at already? Now, if you're a returning viewer to this channel, you'll know that we've looked at the theme of ambition. If you haven't checked it out, it is also in the playlist as well. And can you recall any quotations from our last lesson that might link to any of these themes? So even if you haven't actually been following the previous video, you should think about each of these themes and try and think about how confident you feel about each of them and which ones you really need to go over to make sure that you're ready for the exam. Again, if there's any of these that you're really worried about, then please do get in touch and we can always create more content around these things as well. So look at the statements regarding the theme of the supernatural and identify which are true and which are false. So this is a really good idea to help you get to grips with some of the contextual elements around the play. So our first one then says people believed that supernatural elements could affect nature. Number 2, King James wrote a book on witchcraft called Witches and Stitches, The Dangers of the Dark Arts. Number 3, the witch trials was something that only occurred in the UK. Next we have people thought that witchcraft could impact political events. And finally, single women were often the primary targets during the witch trials. So if you'd like to pause the video here and go through it in your own time, please feel free to do so. Again, all I want you to do is just to see which ones you think are true and which are false. We're going to have some feedback now in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on our left hand side then we have the true statements and we have the false statements on the right. So firstly then, people believed that supernatural elements could affect nature. Now this is true, and this is also something that we see quite often in the play. Specifically we see it when Macbeth actually goes back to see the witches for the second time, and he talks about the power that they have over nature there. Secondly, people thought that witchcraft could impact political events. This was something that was generally quite a suspicious thing held by King James, and obviously it was something he was very interested in, which is probably why Shakespeare decided to include that within the play. And then for a final true statement, single women were often the primary targets during the witch trials. Again, you have this idea that a woman, specifically a woman that's not married, that wouldn't fit the kind of cultural, stereotypical norms, might be someone that they suspect of being linked to witchcraft. Now for our full statements, we have King James wrote a book on witchcraft called Witches and Stitches, The Dangers of Dark Arts. So he did actually write a book on witchcraft, but it was called Demonology. And then the next one, the witch trials was something that only occurred in the UK. This is not true. This is something that was going throughout many different countries, and it was something that was kind of almost like a global event. So it's important to think about when we think about the supernatural, is that it's not just this small isolated incident where people suspected that witches actually existed. It was actually something that was quite a widespread issue throughout society. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So we're sticking with the same theme that we just looked at, and this question says, starting with this extract, how does Shakespeare present the idea of the supernatural? In it you can write about how Shakespeare presents the idea of the supernatural in this extract, and how he presents the idea of the supernatural in the play as a whole. And this is going with AQA, so AQA have it for 30 marks for this question, with 4 marks for your links to the context. So within this one, it's really important to think about, not only do you need to demonstrate your understanding based on the extract, but you also need to think about the play as a whole, okay, so the rest of it as well, and that's where our quotations are going to come in a little bit. So as we look at the question then, I'd like to think about the challenges. So the first one is, how confident do you feel about the theme of the supernatural? Secondly, the extract we are given is from Act 4, Scene 1. Do you know what happens in this point of the play? The only reason why we're asking that is because we're trying to make sure that when you look at the play or have a question relating to the play, that you know it in quite depth, right? So you need to know what happens in each act of the play in case some of it comes up in the exam. And then finally, for our mega challenge, can you recall any quotations from the play that link to the theme of the supernatural? Look at the quotations below and work out the missing phrases or words from each one. So we're going to just go for 5 quotations to start off with, just to get us used to actually remembering some of these key ones that occur within the play. So the first one says then, is this a blank which I see before me, the handle towards my blank? Number 2, we have none of woman blank shall blank Macbeth. Number 3, come you blank that tend on blank thoughts, blank me here. Number 4, blood will have blank. And our final one, fair is foul and blank is blank, and by the pricking of my blank, something blank this way comes. So if you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. It's also important to try and consider our stretch and challenge task there as well. Can you put these quotations in chronological order and work out where they actually occur in the play as well? Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So for number 1 then, we have, is this the dagger which I see before me? The handle towards my hand, and that's in Act 2, Scene 1. For number 2, we have none of woman born shall harm Macbeth, which is in Act 4, Scene 1. And just to remind you, this is one of the prophecies that Macbeth gets the second time he goes to see the witches. Number 3, come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. Number 4, blood will have blood, and that's in Act 3, Scene 4. And number 5, fair is foul and foul is fair, and by the pricking of my thumbs something wicked this way comes. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to start thinking about how this would apply to the actual exam question. So look at the response and attempt the challenges that follow. In this extract, Shakespeare presents a supernatural through Macbeth's vision of the dagger. Macbeth describes it as something that he can see but not touch, which makes him question his own senses. This suggests the supernatural has power over him and is influencing his actions. The dagger also leads him towards Duncan's room, symbolising how the supernatural is pushing Macbeth towards murder. In the play as a whole, the supernatural is presented mainly through the witches. From the beginning, they predict Macbeth's future, and their prophecies make him think about becoming king. Shakespeare also shows the supernatural through Banquo's ghost, which appears at the banquet and frightens Macbeth. Lady Macbeth also refers to the supernatural when she calls on spirits to unsex her. The supernatural is important because it shows how Macbeth loses control and becomes increasingly influenced by forces beyond the ordinary world. So if you want to pause it here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to use what we've just read to think about some challenges in the next part of the video. So if you want access to the full extent of the example responses, we have 3 different types: a high level, a mid level and a low level response as well. So what you can do is first of all look at the example that we just went through in the previous part of the video and try and decide what kind of grade you think this would achieve. Now if you're actually using the lesson that we used previously, you can use the success criteria that we made from the last lesson to give the response of what went well and an even better if. And if you would like to actually attempt this question, I'd like you to write the next paragraph in response to the question. If you need anyone to give you feedback or any advice, please feel free to get in touch. We're always happy to kind of help people along their way if they need it as well. So if you want to actually download the full extent of the extract as well as the PowerPoint, there will be a link included in this video as well. So now what we're going to do is just think about a little bit of the actual terminology that might help to boost our grades a little bit. So we're going to look at the terminology that's in the box on the left hand side and think about the challenges that follow. So the first one says then, out of all these techniques, which of these phrases have you heard of before? If we think about a super challenge, we think of which of these can you actually define? So it might be that there's a few techniques here that you've heard of before, but actually knowing word for word what it means might be a little bit challenging for some people. And then the mega challenge, can you link any of these to your understanding to the play as a whole? So we have a soliloquy, a side, dramatic irony, a refrain, in media res, semantic field, motif and trope. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on our left hand side then we have our key terms, and on the right we have the key definitions. So for soliloquy, this is going to be a really important one. Again, you have one specifically with some of the central characters, most notably Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. So this is when a character is speaking by themselves. Soliloquy is a really good word to know. It also derives from the word solo as well, which you can see at the start of the word there as well. Next, aside. Now this is something that's often lost in translation, especially when you're thinking about reading the text as opposed to watching the performance. Now an aside is when something is not meant to be said to the rest of the characters on stage, only to the audience. So that's something that visually is a lot more beneficial when we're actually watching the play. Dramatic irony. So this is when the audience is aware of something that the characters are not. Refrain. This is a word or phrase that is repeated throughout the play, such as fair is foul and foul is fair. In media res, which is when something is structurally started in the action. Semantic field, we have a group of words that have a common connection or a theme. A motif is a recurring image, symbol, sound, or idea within a story that has symbolic significance and helps develop the overall theme. And finally, we have a trope, a common character trait used in literature. In terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. So we're going to recall another key theme in the play, understand how to approach an exam question, and apply your understanding to attempt an exam question and track your progress. If you are attempting any of these exam questions, it's really important that you get someone to give you feedback and a mark so that you know if you're making progress. And again, if you do need any help or support, please feel free to reach out. So as I said before, if you do need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far in the video, guys, I want to thank you for your commitment, and again, please do reach out if you need any help or support. Thank you, bye bye. Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at our third lesson in the series, looking at Macbeth, specifically focusing on the characters and the themes. So we're going to go through some of the key components when approaching the exam. If you haven't done so already, please could you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to recall some key quotations in relation to the theme of violence, understand how the theme is characterised in the play, and finally apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Learning recap. Look at the themes below and attempt the challenges that follow. So we've had supernatural and witchcraft, leadership, kingship and tyranny, femininity, violence, guilt, bravery and courage, and ambition. So what I'd like to think about then, for first of all, is which of these themes have you looked at already? If you can stretch yourself a little bit further as well, can you try and recall any quotations from the last lesson that we did that might link to any of these themes? So the reason why we're doing this is we're just trying to make sure that we can tick off a few of these central themes before the exam, because one of them may actually be a proper one that comes up in the real assessment. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So it says then, starting with this extract, explore how Shakespeare presents violence in Macbeth. You can write about how Shakespeare presents violence in this extract and how Shakespeare presents violence in the play as a whole. So if we think about our first challenge then, how confident do you feel about this theme in general? For our super challenge, I want you to think about what kind of characters or themes could you link this to? And finally, can you recall any quotations that will link to this question? And that's a really good indicator to whether you need to spend more time on this theme or if it's something you feel fairly confident about. Now what we're going to do is think about the play as a whole. So before we actually look at the specific extract that you've been given, what we want to think about is what can you actually recall about the specific theme that we're looking at today. So what I'd like you to do is to look at the following acts, and for each one, try and remember a quotation that links back to the theme. So within the actual play, we have 5 acts. So I want you to think about which ones you know already, and if you can, see if you can link them to any key moments or key quotations that you can remember. Now if you're struggling to start, use the hints on the next slide to help you. If you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and go through the answers in the next part. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the hints below. So on the left hand side we have our hints, in the centre we're going to have our quotations, and then to reference it you have the act and the scene that these relate to. So for the first hint then, We hear that Macbeth has defeated the army, and this is in Act 1, Scene 2. So a really good quotation to remember for this part of the play would be "unseamed him from the knave to the chaps." For our second one, the importance of washing your hands. Now this occurs in Act 2, Scene 2, and the quotation we're referring to is, "Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hand?" For the third one, Lady Macbeth explains how loyal she is to Macbeth, and that's in Act 1, Scene 7. And this is the part where she says, "I would have dashed the brains out of a babe from its mother's womb." Then for the next one, we have this foreshadows that violence and murder will cause more violence. And that's in Act 3, Scene 4. And its blood will have blood. A nice and short quotation, nice and easy one to remember, and it can be applied to very different themes across the play in general. And for our final one, Macbeth is worried that after killing Banquo, he will have more to fear. And that's in Act 3, Scene 2. So we have scorched the snake, not killed it. So all of these are quite key things to think about regarding the theme that we're looking at today. Also, it's important to try and remember them and think about how they apply to the play as a whole, in case one of those questions come up in a different exam assessment. Look at the extract and analyse it to help respond to the exam question. So this extract has come from Act 2, Scene 3, and it mainly focuses on the character of Macduff. So it says, "O horror, horror, horror! Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee." Macbeth says, "What is the matter?" "Confusion now hath made his masterpiece. Most sacrilegious murder hath broke ope the Lord's anointed temple, and stole therein the life of the building." "What is you say, the life?" "Mean you his majesty? Approach the chamber, and destroy your sight with the new Gorgon. Do not bid me speak. See, and then speak yourself." So this is a really important extract to think about, especially when you consider the character of Macduff, when we don't have a lot to go on regarding him within the play as a whole. So it's really important to think about how he reacts during the actual death or the realisation of the death of King Duncan. Look at the following quotations and work out the missing words or phrases. So we have "blank him from the blank to the chaps," and that's the captain describing Macbeth's brutal killing of MacDonald. Number 2, we have "smoked with blank execution." This is Macbeth's sword, which is steaming from the blood of his enemies. Number 3, "I am blank, and bend up each corporal blank to this terrible feat," and that is Macbeth preparing himself for the violent murder of Duncan. Number 4, "Will all of great Neptune's blank nor wash this blood clean from my blank," and that is Macbeth realising the moral weight of Duncan's murder. Number 5, "A little blank clears us of this blank." This is Lady Macbeth dismissing the violence as something that can be washed away. So if you'd like to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. Use the hints and the actual points behind them as well to try and figure out the key words or the phrases that are missing from each quotation. That's feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So for number 1 then, this is a quotation that we looked at actually previously in the video, is "unseamed him from the knave to the chaps." Number 2, "smoked with bloody execution." And number 3, "I am settled and bend up each corporal agent to this terrible feat." Number 4, "Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hand?" And number 5, "A little water clears us of this deed." So before we move on from these key quotations then, it's important to think back to the exam question, think about the extract that we read through as well, and also the quotes that we just looked at, and think which ones would you class as being judicious. Look at the response to the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow on the next slide. So it says then, "In this extract, Shakespeare presents violence as something that causes fear and guilt. Macbeth has just murdered Duncan and says, 'I have done the deed,' which shows that he knows the violent act cannot be undone. He imagines a voice crying, 'Sleep no more,' showing that the violence has disturbed his mind and that it will never feel peaceful again. This suggests Shakespeare presents violence as something that destroys the person who commits it. Lady Macbeth reacts differently, telling him to consider it not so deeply. Shakespeare uses this contrast to show that she sees violence as practical and necessary for gaining power. This also increases the tension between them. Elsewhere in the play, Shakespeare shows how violence becomes worse as Macbeth becomes more controlling. When he kills Banquo, Macbeth says they have only scorched the snake, showing he believes more violence is needed. This metaphor suggests that violence breeds more violence. The murder of Macduff's family shows how far Macbeth has fallen, as he kills innocent people out of fear. By the end, Macbeth says he will fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked, showing violence has taken over his identity. Now if you want to read through this in more detail, please feel free to do so. I'm now going to jump ahead and think about the challenges in the next part of the video. Look back at the exam response and attempt the challenges that follow. So it says then, what grade do you think the learner is currently working at? For the super challenge, can you identify 2 or more ways that response could be improved? And for our mega challenge, use the response as a starting point for your own attempt at the exam question. Class feedback. Look at the examiner feedback and compare it to some of your own ideas. So it says then, how to improve. A clear, developed explanation with relevant quotations. Good. Okay, so this is one of the positive things about the response. To reach higher grades, you need more detailed language analysis, exploring techniques like metaphor, imagery, or even symbolism. Show deeper understanding of context, such as ideas about kingship or the divine right of kings. And finally, develop a more ambitious conclusion, linking violence to the play's tragic structure. So if you think back to our stretch and challenge test then, use this feedback to plan and structure your response to the exam question. It's really important that you attempt these questions yourself and you make sure that someone's there to give you feedback and constructive criticism to make sure you can make those improvements. Now if you don't have anyone to give you that feedback, please feel free to contact us and we're happy to help you in any way possible. In terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. So we're going to recall some of the key themes in the play, understand how to approach an exam question, and finally apply our understanding to attempt an exam question and track our progress throughout this course. Now if you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things related to English. If you made it this far in the video guys, I want to thank you ever so much for your hard work and your determination. If you do need anything, please feel free to reach out or get in touch. Thank you. Bye bye. Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at Macbeth. Specifically, this will be our 4th lesson in the series, looking at some of the key characters and the key themes to help you get ready for the assessment in the final GCSE exams. If you haven't done so already, could you please like and subscribe? It really does help us out when you do so. So first thing we're going to look at this week is the theme of guilt. I'd like to look at the characters below and try and think about which ones best exhibit this theme, and if you can, try and justify your answers. So here we have then Macbeth, Banquo, Macduff, Lady Macbeth, Malcolm and Duncan. So I'd like to think about each of those characters and how they might relate to that theme, and then if you can think about a stretch and challenge task, I want you to look at the statements on the next slide and decide if you agree or disagree with each one. Look at the statements and decide which ones you agree or disagree with. So although he doesn't experience guilt himself, Duncan's innocence and purity is what drives Macbeth's guilt. So even though we're looking at this theme of guilt and you think about the characters that you initially associate with it, it's also about the broader context of how these relate to the theme as well. Secondly, we have Malcolm and Macduff are both pure and innocent characters. Their positive virtues outshine Macbeth, and they regularly accuse him of murder and of being a tyrant. This highlights Macbeth's guilt for the audience. So again, it's not just necessarily that these characters themselves exhibit guilt, but in contrast their purity actually highlights just how guilty Macbeth is as a character. Next we have Lady Macbeth suffers from guilt the most to highlight the weak perception of women held at the time. So again, this one is more linking back to the context of the play. Macbeth's guilt is largely due to the witches making him hallucinate. And the final one, Banquo's ghost is the manifestation of Macbeth's guilt. The ghost is not really there, but represents the point at which his guilty conscience breaks forth in the play. So what I'd like you to do is just have a look through each of these statements, try and think which ones you agree or maybe even disagree with. And this is a really good habit to get into, because a key thing to think about when you are doing the exam is about considering different interpretations of the text. Okay, so there's not as simple as a right or wrong answer, it's about how you can interpret it based on the evidence that's been provided. So by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to recall some key quotations in relation to the theme of guilt, understand how that theme is characterised in the play, and finally you'll be able to apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Look at the extracts and attempt the challenges that follow. So if you look on the right hand side, this is the extract that we're going to be working on based on the exam question, and it's going to be available within the description of this video. So specifically then we're going to be focusing on Act 5 Scene 1, and this is the point in the play where a doctor has been called to see Lady Macbeth. So as you read through it, I'd like to try to annotate the extracts, focusing on the theme of guilt. If you can think about the super challenge, try and identify any judicious quotations that you know already, and in the mega challenge, can you link these extracts to the context of the play? And all of these are key things that you need to be thinking about when we are getting ready for the actual exam. Again, if you want access to the actual document, then it will be given in the description below. Look at the quotations and identify the missing words or phrases from each one. So firstly we have then, "Will all great blank ocean wash this blank clean from my blank?" Number 2, blank will have blank. Number 3, "Thy bones are blank, thy blood is blank, thou hast no blank in those eyes." Number 4, "'Tis blank to be that which we blank, then by blank dwell in doubtful joy." And that's from Act 3, Scene 2, just a little hint there. And for Act 5, our final one, "All the blank of blank will not blank this little hand." So before we move on as well, if you want to pause the video here and think about these quotations in more detail, please feel free to do so. It's also important to consider our stretch and challenge task. So can you recall the act and scene that each quotation has come from? And this is really going to benefit you when you actually approach the real exam. Class feedback. Check your answers against the correct ones. So for number 1, "Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand?" Number 2, "Blood will have blood." Number 3, "Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold, there has no speculation in those eyes." Number 4, "'Tis safer to be that which we destroy, than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy." And number 5, our last one, "All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." So what I'd like to think about as well with our stretch and challenge task, are there any more key quotations that haven't been mentioned for this theme? Again, there's only 5 here. This doesn't mean that these are the very best quotations, it's just a selection to get you thinking and relating back to the question. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So the question says then, starting with this extract, which is Act 5, Scene 1, how does Shakespeare present the theme of guilt? And within your question you can write about how Shakespeare presents the theme of guilt in this extract, and how Shakespeare presents the theme of guilt in the play as a whole. So we're practicing this in relation to AQA, which will give you 30 marks for this and 4 marks for context. If you are studying it with a different exam board, don't worry about it too much, only the way they distribute the marks may be slightly different. So in terms of the challenge, think back to the quotations. Which ones do you think would be considered judicious for this question? If you're not sure what we mean when we say judicious, we mean the most valuable or the most appropriate quotations to use for the question. For the super challenge, can you come up with 3 ways to make sure you produce a high level response? So think about what you've studied in your normal lessons. Think about some of the things that your teachers advised you makes a good or strong response for this kind of question. Look at the example below and attempt the challenges that follow. In the play as a whole, Shakespeare presents guilt mainly through both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth after they kill Duncan. Macbeth immediately feels guilty and says he hears a voice crying, "Macbeth does murder sleep," showing that guilt will not let him rest. He is later haunted by Banquo's ghost, which is another sign that guilt is affecting his mind. Lady Macbeth pretends to be strong at first, but guilt slowly builds up inside her until she breaks down in this scene. By the end of the play, Shakespeare shows that guilt has destroyed both characters, leading to fear, madness, and death. So for the first challenge then, I'd like you to think, what grade do you think this learner is currently working at? For the super challenge, have they used judicious quotations? And finally, write a what went well and an even better if for this response. Now it's important that whenever you do write your own response that you make sure someone is there to give you feedback and advice to make sure you know where you're going wrong and the things that you're actually doing well. If you do need help with that as well, please do give us a comment and let us know, and we'll try our best to support you any way we can. Teacher feedback. Look at the feedback to understand the mark this would achieve. So on the left hand side we have our strengths, and the first one will be you clearly explain how guilt affects both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth across the whole play. One area of improvement would be that some points could be explained in a little more detail to show how Shakespeare uses dramatic methods such as imagery, structure, or stagecraft to present guilt. Another strength would be you choose well-selected quotations such as Macbeth does murder sleep, which support your points effectively. Another area for a development then, you tend to summarise the plot at times. Try to focus more on the writer's intentions, including a short concluding sentence linking back to the theme, and this would strengthen the overall coherence of the response. For the other strength, your ideas are logical and show a sound understanding of how guilt develops over time. So overall, this paragraph shows solid understanding for a grade 5 with clear points and relevant evidence. Learning recap. Look at the themes below and attempt the challenges that follow. So we have supernatural and witchcraft, leadership, kingship and tyranny, femininity, violence, guilt, bravery and courage, and ambition. So the first thing to think about is, can you look at these key themes and consider which ones you have studied before? These are generally considered to be the most vital and important themes within the play, so hopefully you would have covered them with your proper teacher. For the super challenge, can you recall any quotations from any of these? And finally, rank your current understanding of each theme. Which one do you need to focus on next? And the reason why we're doing this is just to make sure that when you do actually get into that exam situation, that you're not blindsided by a theme that you haven't spent much time on, or you don't maybe feel too strongly about. So it's really important that you're aware of your strengths and your weaknesses at this point, so that we can focus on it as we go forward. Now in terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. We're going to break down another key theme within the play. We're going to understand how to approach an exam question. And finally, we'll be applying our understanding to attempt an exam question and track our progress. Now, if you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far in the video, guys, I want to thank you for your commitment and all the best with your work and revision in the future. Bye bye. Hi everyone, this is the 5th lesson in the series of lessons looking at the key themes and characters within Macbeth. Specifically, we're going to narrow down on a theme called loyalty and betrayal today. If you need any additional support, please feel free to like and subscribe, get in touch with us and we'll help you out any way that we can. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to look at the statements and attempt the challenges that follow. So the first statement says then, Questions about Lady Macbeth are easier to answer. There's no point including too much context. So the third statement says Banquo should have seen Macbeth's betrayal coming and done something to prevent it. And then we have, you can still get good marks if you only use the extract you were given in the exam. So the first thing I'd like to think about the first challenge. Which of these statements do you agree or disagree with? Then if you can stretch yourself a little bit further, think about the super challenge. How confident do you feel regarding context? Now if you're not too sure what we mean when we're referring to context, the context is the historical, social and political aspects that may have impacted the actual writing of the play. Then for our final one, our mega challenge, how important is the theme of betrayal in the play? And as we said earlier, that is going to be what we focus on later on. So by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to recall some of the key quotations in relation to the theme of betrayal and loyalty, understand how that theme is characterised in the play, and then finally you'll be able to apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. Starting with this extract, explore how Shakespeare presents loyalty and betrayal in Macbeth. You can write about how loyalty and betrayal are shown in this extract, and how these ideas are developed elsewhere in the play. So first of all, I want you to think, when faced with this question, how confident do you feel? So let's say this was a real life exam. Would you feel like you'd be able to answer it appropriately, or do you feel like this one might throw you off a little bit? Next, for our super challenge, can you think about, does this link to any other key themes that we've looked at before? So if you're new to this channel and you haven't been keeping up with the Macbeth videos we've been doing, we've looked at many different themes as well, and you may find that there's a slight correlation between a few of them. And then for our mega challenge, a good idea to do would be to come up with 3 or 4 quotations to help respond to this question. Now this is a really good exercise because within the exam you will be expected to be able to memorise a few quotations to apply to your writing, so the easier it is for you to recall those quotations, the easier it will be for the real live exam. So if you think about struggling to start, have a look at the extracts that you've been provided with. If you want to actually access that as well, there'll be a link provided so you can download the full extract. So there's the actual key for the extract. So in case you can't find it at the link or anything like that, it is Macbeth Act 3 Scene 1, and you can see there that is the longer extract. So if you want to download it, you just need to click on the link within the description. Use the hints in the table to work out the quotations that are going to help us to answer this question. So as you can see from the table, then we've got the hint on the left hand side, and we've got the acts and the scenes that this refers to on the very right hand side. Now if you want to pause the video and try and work out these by yourself, please feel free to do so. We're now just going to run through them quickly. So the first one says then, Macbeth expresses concern over Duncan's visit. The quotation we're referring to is, he's here in double trust. For the second one, Macduff shows loyalty to Scotland over loyalty to Macbeth. And a quotation to prove that is, not in the legions of horrid hell can come a devil more damned. For number 3, Macbeth realises he must betray Banquo if he wants to remain in power. So the quotation is then, to be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. And then Macduff expresses his feelings towards Macbeth, which is in Act 4 Scene 3. This tyrant whose sole name does blister our tongues. And the final one, Macbeth tells Lady Macbeth that they need to hide their true intentions towards King Duncan, and that's in Act 1 Scene 7. And the quotation is, false face must hide what the false heart doth know. Look at the starts of the exam and attempt the challenges that follow. In this extract from Act 3 Scene 1, Shakespeare presents betrayal as a result of Macbeth's growing insecurity and loss of loyalty. Macbeth admits that Banquo is the only man he fears, showing how the former friendship has broken down. The imagery of a fruitless crown and barren sceptre suggests that betraying Duncan has not brought Macbeth satisfaction, but instead has made him more paranoid. Macbeth's betrayal of Banquo shows how ambition has replaced loyalty. He admits that he murdered Duncan for Banquo's sons, highlighting how far he's fallen morally. Elsewhere, Macbeth pretends to be loyal when he says, "The service and the loyalty I owe," which contrasts with his actions and shows how betrayal is often hidden behind false loyalty. Overall, Shakespeare suggests that betrayal leads to further violence and moral decline. So now that we've read through it, I'd like to think about the challenges that appear just above this. So for the first challenge, can you identify any strengths and weaknesses within this response? So try and think back to what we've covered in previous lessons, or maybe what you've covered in your proper lessons, and try and think of the kind of things that you'd have within a success criteria. For the super challenge, I'd like to consider, has the student included judicious quotations? Now, if you're not too sure what I mean by this, a judicious quotation is simply one that actually works really well with your writing and may be considered valuable. So are the quotations they're using actually working within their writing? And then finally, for the mega challenge, can you use this response as a starting point for your own attempt to answer the exam question? Again, as I said before, if you need help and support and you want anyone to look over it, please feel free to contact us and we'll try and help you out any way that we can. Now, in terms of our next lesson, we're going to be covering the following things. We're going to recall another key theme that's in the play. We're going to understand how to approach an exam question. And finally, we'll be applying our understanding to attempt an exam question and track your progress. It's also important to note that whenever you are doing an actual exam response, that you make sure you keep hold of it. You make sure that you either have a tutor or a teacher who actually is there to read through it and give you feedback. And that way you can also track how well you are actually getting prepared ahead of your real life exam. If you need additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far in the video, guys, I want to thank you for your commitment and your hard work. And just to remind you, if you do want that extra support, you can always join our membership as well, which would allow you to have access to all our marking facilities as well as feedback, and also, if you feel the need, some one-to-one support if that is something that will help you with your exam. Thank you very much and all the best for your work and revision in the future. Bye bye. Hi everyone, this is our 6th lesson in the series of lessons looking at characters and themes within the play Macbeth. Now what we're going to do is we're going to explore some of the key aspects of the exam and the play just to make sure that you're ready for the assessment. First thing I'd like you to do is to look at the following words and attempt the challenges that follow. So we have tragic hero, soliloquy, hubris, a martyr, facade or facade, protagonist, and then I'd like to think about the following challenges. So first of all then, which one of these words do you know already, and how might you apply these to your current understanding of the play? Now if you're not too sure what any of these words mean, don't worry about it too much. We will be going through the key definitions in the next part in just a moment. So by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to recall some of the key quotations in relation to the theme of betrayal and loyalty, understand how that theme is characterised in the play, and then finally you'll be able to apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Now in terms of our next lesson, we're going to be covering the following things. We're going to recall another key theme that's in the play. We're going to understand how to approach an exam question. And finally, we'll be applying our understanding to attempt an exam question and track your progress. It's also important to note that whenever you are doing an actual exam response, that you make sure you keep hold of it. You make sure that you either have a tutor or a teacher who actually is there to read through it and give you feedback. And that way you can also track how well you are actually getting prepared ahead of your real life exam. If you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far in the video, guys, I want to thank you for your commitment and your hard work. And just to remind you, if you do want that extra support, you can always join our membership as well, which would allow you to have access to all our marking facilities as well as feedback, and also, if you feel the need, some one-to-one support if that is something that will help you with your exam. Thank you very much, and all the best for your work and revision in the future. Bye bye.